Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to the latest episode of Baked in the Cake, where you get smarter by the second of watching. And we have a new addition to the show, and it's not a person. We still have Kyle and DJ, but we're going to start it off with a segment that we're temporarily calling our weekly obsession. So it's just where we're gonna just rave about what we've been obsessed about over the week. It has nothing to do with anything but what we want to talk about. And I think DJ has one already. So what's yours, DJ?
Well, this past weekend I've been binge watching Netflix, and I started watching Madam Secretary. Have you heard that one?
Heard of it. I've never seen it.
Leah Tioni is the actress, and it's about the Secretary of State for a president. What's that?
Téa Leoni, right?
Oh yeah. Whatever her name is. And so it's been pretty interesting. I think I tried to watch it one time before, and it didn't really. I think I left after a few episodes and started over, and I'm almost done with the first season. So. Yeah, it's my obsession for this week.
If I recall, that was a broadcast television show. Like it was on either ABC or CBS or NBC, which means that a season is often like 24 episodes.
I think the first one's like 20.
Wow. See, I feel like when you broadcast episodes, like you're really committed when you're watching them.
That shows how useless I was this past weekend. That's a long time now.
I can't. This is not my obsession. I was obsessed over something else. I actually have several obsessions I could talk about. I watched the MUFON Files, or Hangar 1 MUFON Files, which is like a history channel alien documentary. So I was still hardcore all week after all the supernatural weird stuff we've been talking about. Still watching it, still into it.
Oh man!
Kyle, do you have an obsession, Kyle, or are you just being a lawyer 24/7?
No. I'm not being a lawyer 24/7. I take Sundays off, but I like movies, and so I've been watching some old movies. So the one I watched this last week was Double Indemnity. I watched that over the weekend, which is an old film noir movie, and it was made in 1944 by Billy Wilder, and I love them, so I watched that.
Wow.
That is so much. Both of y'all just blew me out of the water on a sophistication level for what I'm about to bring to the table. So I still don't even know what you're talking about, Kyle. I mean, it's an old movie.
That's an old movie. It's black and white, 1944. I guess they had color by then, but a lot of movies were still made in black and white. It's got great shadows. It's like do you know what film noir is?
No.
Okay, if you think it's like that, if you think of like an old detective who is does a voiceover and there's a damsel in distress, but she's also a femme fatale, and so it's like it was Thursday at 9:00, and I had no business being out on the town at that time, and then and then whatever, some sort of murder happens that she might convince him to do, or a theft or a heist or something like that. And then,
I know exactly what you're talking about, only because I've seen sitcoms that will have an episode that kind of mock that. So that's the only way I know what you're talking about.
So it's like detective kind of show?
Well, this particular one is, there's an insurance salesman, makes a call at a guy's house, but his wife's the only one that's there. And he's like, hey, you guys got to renew your car insurance. She's like, do you have life insurance as well? And he's like, yeah, we can do that. And she's like, can I get you to sign can I buy that for my husband without him knowing? Right? And then you go on from there. And so it's great. The dialogue is great. It's witty. And because of all the codes that they had, or yeah, the codes that they had back then, all the dialogue has to be sharp and precise because they had to say things without actually saying things, or show things without actually showing things, and which is part of what I like, is because I feel like it's the less is more concept.
Oh man, I had to watch a few silent movies for my German class, and if you look away for 1 second, you have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, no, that's true. But this is very I mean, it's actually visually, it's very cool in the shadows and stuff and how they film it. But the dialogue is just witty and snappy. I like
I
it.
always have a hard time understanding people in old movies like that. Like,
You see, why would you do that?
I remember watching an old movie in my theology of movies class, and I think it's called The Room. I'm not sure. And it's all one like long take, and it was black and white. I don't know if it was an Alfred Hitchcock or what, but it was a movie, and all I remember is like a body in a trunk, and people were dialoguing, and I don't know. It was pretty entertaining, pretty interesting.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so I have mine because Kyle's going to talk about old movies for the rest of the night, and that is not what I have on the docket. So
I'm sorry, I just got called to another podcast that's talking about old movies. I'll see you guys later.
What we just did. So what you're looking at right now is not just a Sasquatch, but as you can see, the Sax Squatch. And this was a live full show that he put on. And let's just listen to a little bit of it. Oh, get ready. Gotta wet that reed. And then he even switches between different like types of saxophones. So let me see if I can get it. Yeah, here we go.
It is 34 minutes long.
The Barry sax. You know what? You posted something on Facebook with a chicken doing worship songs.
Yeah.
Was that, man? That is so hilarious.
Okay, so I'm gonna do that one too.
Okay.
We're gonna talk about that.
Is that similar to kind of your obsession right now?
Yeah, it does.
I'll have to tell you, I was pretty annoyed at it first, like that you'd post that, and then it just got funnier and funnier as it went on. I had to go through the channel and watch a couple.
Well, I think they only had one up, right?
Well, if you clicked on the links, then you could find other ones.
Well, so the chicken singing thing was a thing before this channel.
I think so too.
It was hilarious also. But this is Kyle. So do y'all know the song? I'm guessing DJ does, but I don't think Kyle keeps up with this song, "The Blessing" from Elevation Worship.
Maybe. I don't know.
It's super popular right now. It's actually just quoting scripture, the entire thing. I think it's tied to prosperity gospel, and I don't like the context it's used in, but it is just quoting scripture. I don't even think there's a word they changed. It's a well done song, but I won't ever use it because it's tied to prosperity gospel. Which is our topic for tonight, by the way. So here's a song done by a rubber chicken, and you're gonna love it. If I can just share this, here we go. I need to fast forward some. Here we go. gets better because you gotta get that build. You gotta get to that bridge in a worship song. Here it is. Here it is. Yeah. So that's another thing I found this week.
That's hilarious.
I also found some bands, but I'm just gonna save them for next week because I'm gonna obsess over them for a while.
Oh, that was rough. That was. How did you like? Now, did you just go in search of fake animals, or not? I mean, that was not the real Sasquatch. So when I say fake animals, I believe chickens exist. I believe Sasquatch exists. So I'm not trying to be crazy. I believe animals exist.
So I found my wife was gone this weekend and in bed at like 1:30 a.m. or something. And
That answers a lot of questions right there. But
came across the Sasquatch. That's how I came across the Sasquatch.
Sasquatch.
And the worship chicken I came across in last week sometime during a group I'm in on Facebook. So the group it's a worship group and things, and someone shared that in there, and it was hilarious, and I loved it. And if they could take that joke, other people can too. I thought that was good.
I feel like if I knew the words better, then the joke would be even funnier because I would know that like the high pitch was like, and he loves you. Yes, he loves you. Something like that. But I don't know the words. So it's like.
Well, there is a meme. I hate it. Kind of ruins memes. We have to explain them. I'm going to do it anyways. So there's a meme.
Hold on a second. We have a new section on the podcast called Explains Memes.
Yes. Okay. So it was like a GIF meme, and it was like, who's going to pay for this $6 trillion stimulus bill? And it took a part of this song where Carrie Job is singing, and your children and their children and their children. And she sings that over and over again.
That's good.
Isn't there one with like the little Russian dolls?
I don't know.
He keeps.
Yes, I shared that one too. Yeah. It was you get the smaller one, and then a smaller one, and a smaller one.
Yeah. And their children and their children.
Yeah. Okay, so now that we're talking about heretical churches, we can segue into the reason we have gathered here today, and that would be a documentary called American Gospel, and it's been around for a long time, but they finally managed to get it on Netflix, and that's a big deal. And so, Kyle, did you get to watch this documentary?
I did. I watched the whole thing.
I watched the whole thing Sunday, and what?
Wait, what day did you tell us to watch it? That's the day I watched it.
I think Sunday.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I watched it that day. I assumed you had already watched it. Okay.
Actually, I watched an hour of it Saturday night because it's kind of long, and then I finished it Sunday morning. And so.
Well, it certainly didn't show in your worship service leading.
I know. I'm really good. So DJ watched it. It took him a while to.
Yeah, I had to do it in segments because I was trying to listen carefully because I knew we were going to talk about it. And so I had to do it in little chunks. And I finished this morning before work.
Yeah. So, Kyle, I'm going to start with you first. What were your first impressions?
Oh, well, I was trying to figure out what they were actually like, what the point of view was going to be. But the first part of it, like the first 20 minutes, is they very clearly want to dedicate that time to saying what the gospel is.
Yes.
And so, like, just like, this is the gospel. This is what we believe. about the Bible. So the people making it were like obviously doing it through different interviews. And so I was like, because I had no idea. I just was like, turn it on. What are they going to talk about? So then I was like, okay, well, this is what the gospel is, and that's the sense that I got.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about the rest of it then?
Well, some of that stuff is so crazy, but I tell you what, watching it and seeing the effect that it has on other people's lives gave me a more visceral reaction than I used to get, because man, I used to love watching Benny Hinn, not because I thought he was real, but like in high school and stuff, watching that stuff was just hilarious to me. Oh my goodness, I thought it was.
So for anyone that actually doesn't know what we're talking about, the movie, like what Kyle just said, the first 20 minutes, they just do a gospel presentation. Really, that's what it is. And then the rest of it is a kind of a rebuttal, I guess, to the Word of Faith movement in churches, and super televangelistic, charismatic churches. That's, if for Benny Hinn, now he technically renounced the prosperity gospel. I have yet to go follow up with that, but he did a whole video saying that the gospel is not for sale, and he's no longer accepting money and this and this and this. And that was before. It was after this documentary had already been out. It just wasn't on Netflix. Yeah, it was already, you can rent it on Amazon Prime and stuff, buy a DVD. And
Wow.
I don't know where he's at on that, because Benny Hinn's nephew or whatever was a big person in this. But this is kind of, I'm going to go ahead and just call it the historical Protestant point of view of Christianity against this new wave Word of Faith movement that's happened in the 20th century and extended into now. So the Word of Faith movement is what you're talking about, Kyle, and you said it opened your eyes a little bit?
Oh, no, I mean, I knew that the theology was terrible, and I didn't agree with any of them. But I'll tell you one thing that's a little bit tricky about this stuff is I remember when Joel Osteen first came on the scene, very first comes on the scene. You don't always know that somebody who might be on TV, who might have a big church, is this way. I mean, John MacArthur has a big church, big audience that listens to it, right? John Piper, there's other churches that are huge. So you don't always know. So I remember listening to him do a preach, and I was like, okay, this guy's not saying much, but he's not saying anything bad. Yeah. And then, I think his first book was probably fine. I never read his first book, but like, I don't remember people being able to pull out stuff and going like, this is what's terrible. This is what's terrible. And I had a friend from high school who said, hey, I know that you're a Christian. What do you think of this guy? And I said, well, people kind of rag on him for only talking about the positive points of view. He doesn't talk about hell enough, but if it's helping you and it's something that you understand, the Gospels is really what you want to do. And then I pointed him to some other, I was like, hey, read John Piper. He's way better. Now I would never do that. I'd be like, yeah, there's a reason they say that, and here's why. But that was like at the very beginning. I knew nothing about him, and so all of a sudden you start to see that he writes all these books, makes all this money from writing all these books. People start to read them and study them and be like, oh, this is terrible. Like, that's not true.
Joel Osteen is a little bit of a difficult character because he's very good at committing heresy without you knowing, and phrasing things. And so, that hopefully anyone can agree with this, that type of phrasings. And it's really watered down in comparison to people like Benny Hinn and Kenneth Copeland and Todd White. Joel Osteen is much harder to pin down to the ground to show what he meant and how he's wrong, I think. But I thought, so I think DJ has some things to say about it too.
Yeah, well, in general, I don't like, talking bad about other preachers, just in general, even though, it's clear that there are heresies and, and I think there was even one segment that had Rick Warren on there, and it was real quick, and I think it was only once. And I always thought Rick Warren was pretty pretty good theologically. Probably not, as tight theologically or doctrinally as like John MacArthur or Piper, but I don't know. I think that kind of rubs me a little bit in a raw way. Just making a documentary, just coming out and attacking it, and of course, there's no doubt that the Word of Faith movement causes damage, and it can really hurt people. And I guess just for clarity, I don't know if we defined it yet, but the Word of Faith, I mean, we're talking mostly about prosperity, health, and wealth type gospel that says if you have the faith or you're anointed by God, that you can get what you basically pray for or set your mind to. And so if that's if that's wealth or healing, I think that's what we're talking about, the prosperity gospel, to sum up.
Yeah. Well, I think it's absolutely counter to everything that Jesus told his disciples to expect from the gospel.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Sending you out as sheep among wolves. And, when we see Jesus is the good shepherd, but he's sending us out as sheep among wolves. And that is, the Christian life. It really is. It's relying on Jesus for everything.
So I guess in general, my view of the show was that I believe the truth. I believe that it represented truth, and the gospel. I thought was a good gospel presentation and explanation. But something I can't place it. Something still rubs me the wrong way. Maybe it's the presentation, that it's on media or TV, and so the message is going out to a vast audience, and if we're going to talk about how Jesus did things, and I think a little bit more of a discussion on discipleship and being with people and living life, I think. I don't know if it did such a good job talking about that. Of course, I'm a big discipleship fan, and that's a big part of the emphasis when I talk about Christ with people is using it in the idea of discipleship. And I really can't pinpoint exactly why it rubs me the wrong way.
Well, I can tell you one thing, maybe just so I seem balanced, because I very much agreed with 90% of it. And it really did. So I never had any experience. I grew up in the Bible Belt my entire life. I would have only ever gone to Baptist churches, just coincidentally. It's just where I always ended up. And I've never been around Word of Faith movement people at all. And it helped me a lot to understand the movement. They did some historical things and what kind of happened and the development of it and where it's at now. So that helped me a lot. So Todd White seems to be the star of the show, guys. Don't you agree? He's one of the big players. And I had seen a lot of Todd White stuff on like scrolling through Facebook and things like that. And Todd White seems to like kind of be hard to pin down from what they put on public platforms like that. They never put anything too crazy that he says. But I thought they really nailed him down in the documentary.
In what way?
Well, his fake healing.
Oh yeah, about the legs.
Yeah. Well, because it's obviously just like a sleight of hand trick.
Well, okay, but when I saw that before the guy even's like, oh, you just have to speed it up to do it. It's one of those things where, did you guys ever have those like bracelets, those metallic bracelets that people put on and they're like, oh, this helps it.
Yeah.
Copper. The copper bracelets or magnets or something like that?
Yeah, magnets, whatever, right? And the way that they'll always test you out is they go, now look, put your hands up like this. You have both hands up like this, and they go, just stand there and let me push you. And then they push you slightly and you fall backwards. And you go, oh, and then they go, now put this on. And they go,
okay.
Now let me push you.
So I have a story kind of about that and about the legs and like I said last week, I'm a skeptical person. So I went to the chiropractor, and the one I went to, and hope he's not listening. He's a friend.
Don't name him. Just don't name him, and you'll be fine.
Okay, I won't even name the location.
Yeah.
And but one of the ways he determined, to adjust your back was if your feet were uneven. And so I guess it goes all the way up to your hips or something. But I went to a different chiropractor, same city, and everything was great. Back adjustment, the cracking and all that. And then it got weird when they started pulling out little like rocks and putting them in your hands. And they said, and they pushed down your hand. And if you like are able to resist it, then it's the strength of the rock in your hand. And I was like, oh my goodness, you just lost me there. Everything was great. My back feels great, but now that you did the stones in my hand and pushed my hands down, and I don't know, it was just like.
Well, chiropractic is it started out as a cult. You know that, right?
No.
It started out as a cult, and a guy that
is it like yoga?
He could heal blind goats or something stupid. And yeah, chiropractic has a crazy history, crazy weird. But the Todd White, what made it so clear to me that he is knowingly deceiving people, absolutely knowingly, is when you go around and there's this weird pandemic of people with one leg shorter than the other, and that seems to heal all these crazy ailments. And there wasn't, and he magically grows it out. It's not even like a chiropractic move. He magically grows their leg. Like, that's a bunch of malarkey.
Well, the scene that was kind of eye-catching for me was, I think it was Bill Johnson with Bethel. He's wearing glasses, and he's telling everybody that, their sight's being healed, and he's got his glasses on, and he's pointing to his eye. Did you remember that scene?
Yeah. I remember that now. Yeah, and
I thought that was hilarious.
Well, now you even have the faith healers. Like, one of them died here recently. I saw an article on Facebook, and they were going around trying to heal people of coronavirus, and he got coronavirus and died. I'm like, well, shouldn't be that hard. Oh, and Bethel Church did stop going to the hospitals to heal people because of coronavirus. I'm like, if you're so legit, why don't you just go heal them all? What's the problem? What are you scared of? I guess you don't have enough faith.
I think one of them made that case that why are you doing this in a big stadium instead of going to the hospitals?
Yeah,
where real sick people are.
Oh, and that's how I always wondered, how in the world, not how in the world, it makes sense if I would have thought about it, but just to have somebody testify that they're like, no, I went there, and I have the guy who had cerebral palsy, who's like, I went there, and they said, and he was like in line, and then they didn't let him go up, and they said, step over here and pray that the Lord will heal you, right? And so he didn't get to go up on stage to get slinged down or whatever.
Well, have y'all seen the video? You were talking about this earlier, Kyle, so you might have. I meant to bring it up then. That they have edited of Benny Hinn doing all of his, magic people falling things, and they add the song "Let the Bodies Hit the Floor" to it.
That's funny. That would be great. That would be really good. I would think that would be funny. So here's one of the parts that I started noticing recently, maybe in the last 10 years. I don't know how often they did this, but the way that you're watching on TV and the way that they do their offering is like, they're going to be like, oh, this is your holy water. We'll send you that. Or your, the one I wrote down is resurrection seed, right? Oh. Where's your, and you'd send in your money to get your resurrection seed. And like they have all these different names for what they're peddling to you on there. And that's become more and more prominent. I feel like that's not what was happening, because I don't know why. I haven't recently, because I don't have cable anymore. And I haven't had cable in a long time. But one of my, that was the opening segment is Secret Obsessions or whatever we do. And I'll get sucked in watching these guys, not because I've ever believed them, but just because I'm mesmerized by them. I'm like, what are you saying? What is it that's here that people, but I can see why they're drawn in. And then all of a sudden it's like, here's your resurrection seed. And I was like, oh, okay. Yep. You're crazy.
Well, one of the phrases that it actually helped me, it was a phrase that they warned about. They're like, this is the type of, words that they're going to use, and you can kind of identify it, what a word of faith movement or prosperity gospel with. And one of the phrases that I had to learn was breakthrough. And they use the word breakthrough, mostly the worship ministers in those kinds of denominations will. And I'm like, what do you mean breakthrough? That's super vague. And we need to organize our worship service to where we, it's not successful. This worship service wasn't successful. I'm like, well, did you worship God? They're like, we didn't have any breakthroughs, or we didn't have that many breakthroughs. And maybe if we do this, we'll have more breakthroughs. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What's this breakthrough? And it's healing, or, someone claiming they were healed and having some supernatural experience feeling. Maybe you're getting knocked over like Benny Hinn does to people. Maybe that's a breakthrough, but it's vague and, it seems kind of harmless at first. Like maybe I had a breakthrough in a song where I feel God touched me and ministered to me in some way, versus, it seems like that could be where they're going. It seems kind of safe, but that's not what they mean at all by it. They really mean like, my, one earlobe was bigger than the other, and now you're something stupid. and I've actually, in my ATM down the road, they'll twice a year, I think it happens, they just put, I'd say it's like a 8x8 room, like glass, and they will just cover the thing in flyers from these Word of Faith healers. And it costs like $40 to get in the door to go to this evangelistic thing. And they have all these, and they're going to ask for more money later too. And they have all these testimonies on the back. And it's amazing how many people were kind of deaf in one ear, and then it was healed. And, invisible back pain was healed, and all these phony testimonies. And I don't know. I just find that all to be very strange. And
I do want to rehash something. I think it's something that we kind of I want to go back to, because I don't think it was recorded, because it may come across like we're like really kind of making fun of people that are caught up in the Word of Faith movement. And one of the things that we had brought before was about how we can get caught up just because of it's something we're raised in. We saw that with Conti Hinn, that he was raised in this whole movement with Benny Hinn. That's Benny Hinn's nephew. That's real prominent in the show. And like I had mentioned earlier that that I was raised Catholic until I was in college. And so I know what it is to never question anything that you're taught, that never to, I just had no reason to question. And so I can, understand that some people might have been raised in the Word of Faith movement, and all their friends and family are in it too. So they have no reason to question what they're learning. And, maybe they're not even, like me, they weren't even, encouraged to read their Bibles. And so, like I get that some people, like hearing this could feel a little bit attacked. So, I just want to, have a little understanding. I know that there seems to be some, mainly, and this is what I think, the leaders who know that they're they got this con going on, but there's people that can actually be really hurt by these movements. And what a sense of letdown and betrayal, when you might discover that there's another way, or you feel like you don't have enough faith to be healed, or there's guilt put upon you when you're not successful. I think the movie brought out a lot of that, those stories where people were really let down by the Word of Faith movement.
Well,
I would, yeah, that is certainly true. I wonder this about when, sometimes I feel like people lie so much that they start to believe their own lies. But that's not always the case. Some people just know that they're lying. I just wonder at one point, like, was Joel Osteen sincere? Was, Kenneth Copeland sincere? Did he really want to try and preach the gospel? Or like, did they always know, like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get a jumbo jet. This will be great.
Well, I don't know, but Todd White, I know I'm coming back to Todd White. But
Next week's segment, his obsession with Todd White.
I'm telling you, we need to have a segment where we just read Todd White tweets, and I read it out, and I say, boom, heresy. And
wait, hold on. Here's the problem. This is why you're obsessed with him. Is one of your legs shorter than the other? Is this why it's really getting to you right now?
So I refused the polio vaccine when I was younger. I'm just kidding. Yeah. So Todd White, to speak to your actual question, Kyle, I think so. Someone knows Todd White personally reached out to him about this documentary and like kind of told him, I was like, bro, you need to repent. I didn't realize you were in all this stuff, and Todd White, since it got on Netflix, they put it on, he addressed it in his church. And what he literally just told complete lies about this guy that confronted him and said that he was the devil and of Satan and this, and that his wife had like a drinking problem and this, and he's never even met the guy's wife either. And that's very, very, very similar to something that happened in Bethel Church. And this whole thing wasn't even about Bethel Church. They mentioned Bill Johnson of Bethel Church a little bit, but the first time I heard of this documentary was in another podcast a few months ago. And I think I had DJ listen to this podcast, but called Defecting from Bethel from Cultish in Apologia Studios. And she was evangelized out of the Bethel School of Supernatural Ministries because of this this documentary. Someone shared through Facebook to them, like was evangelizing her personally in direct messages. And
we might have brought that up in a podcast before.
We've talked about it a little bit at one time, but we know one success story. It's I encourage people who if people who think they might be in this, I don't want to argue with them about it and offend them, I guess you could say, because it just isn't. It's better when people find things on their own, and whenever you can just sit there and watch this documentary, I feel like you have a better chance of that. Even though if you are a strong member of the Word of Faith movement, it can just be straight up offensive because you're so far into it, so.
Well, I wonder if some people who are so far into it would, I guess if you use the term Word of Faith, they might be more accustomed to that because that is, again, a more positive way of saying it rather than saying health and wealth and prosperity gospel is a kind of a derogatory term that when people use it, they go, oh yeah, that's health and wealth. But in the way that somebody who, what was I just forgot what the term was, but the
Word of Faith? The
Word of Faith is it's A, vague, but B, positive, right? Yeah. So it doesn't have the negative connotations because that's not what we would. If I'm up in church talking to somebody about it, or if Pastor Phil brings it up, he'll say health and wealth or prosperity gospel. And
this was the first time I heard that term used.
Word of faith?
Yeah.
I haven't, but it was very recent. I'd always heard health and wealth, and I thought prosperity gospel was a derogatory term also. And I think that's maybe why they've rebranded it Word of Faith, but they show parts of Benny Hinn and all these other people calling it the prosperity gospel, which I thought was weird, because I thought it was a derogatory term. I was like, why would they call it that? Because when I hear prosperity gospel, I get kind of sick to my stomach. I don't like that.
My kids came in and so I was watching it, and it was the night of the giant thunderstorm that we had, so they all got a little scared. So they came in and started watching it with me, but I ended up turning it off because it was a part especially where they're doing so many supercuts of all of the televangelists going through, and they're like, wait, is that true? And so I kept on pausing and be like, no, that's not true, and this is what he's saying. I go, and then the next guy, he's saying why it's not. Like, I had to stop. I'm like, you know what, let's not, this is too much. You guys are going to start thinking that some of this stuff is true, and it's not. The whole point of this is that it's not. It was really a funny time. And then our house, was just being shaked, rattled and rolled by all the lightning.
So do y'all think, just going to wrap this whole thought process up a little bit, do y'all think that it being on Netflix is going to make a difference? Do y'all think it's worth it? They took a financial cut to do it. It's been out, but, it's kind of one of those things like, if you go see the movie Unplanned, only Christians go see the movie Unplanned. It's not an effective ministry, in my opinion. I think you should just go get involved with your pregnancy care center if you want to actually help, go against abortions and care for mothers. So do y'all think that this is going to be, a changing thing for Word of Faith people? Because they do think themselves as Christian, and many of them are, to be honest. I think there are lots of Christians in it.
Well, for me, I'll go first, if that's okay, Kyle. It's a tool. I can see it as a tool, and I know where to find it. And so I know I can go to Netflix and find it. So, yeah, I could see it being used as a tool.
What do you?
I was like trying to find the mute, and then I just decided to turn it away. Wait, okay. DJ, say your point again, starting now.
Okay.
No, that's fine. So
I think we got it. It's fine.
Okay.
So what do you think, Kyle? DJ just said it's a tool.
I'm more inclined to agree with DJ, and I slightly disagree with you on what somebody should or shouldn't do. I love movies, and so I'm like, somebody wants to make a movie, then it's good, then maybe I'll watch it. So one movie I did recently watch that was really well done, well acted, great storytelling was about the Apostle Paul. That was done maybe 2 years ago, maybe a year ago. I don't know if anybody other than Christians saw it, but I was on a business trip. It was playing at the theater, and I went and saw it, and it was great. And so in that sense, I find that these stories can be worth telling and dramatizing so that people might come across them and see them. And that's the whole point of the stories. It's almost like, well, why would you write a story either? Christian books are much more popular than movies, right? More books get sold, more people feel positive about it. There's something about the translation into acting that people find often very cheesy, which is true. And I never saw Unplanned, so I don't know about that one. But like I said, this one about the Apostle Paul was really well done. It was so good, well acted, and and it's dramatic and everything. So in that sense, using this as a medium for evangelism it's God's word, and it's got to be spoken to you, and it's either going to come from the Bible or somebody speaking it to you to a certain extent. But if this helps to get some truth and light and understanding on what you've been reading or what you've been studying or what you've been used to, then I think that'll help, because there could be one kernel, right? There could be the one thing that you didn't recognize that you're like, oh no, they do this. They do the praying for these people in this way because those are the ones that are dealing with the spirit and the soul. But the ones who can't walk or are blind, that's something that's related to what God's having in a different way. And so they could have all of these excuses, but one of the excuses could be battered down by watching a documentary that kind of systematically, it went through different steps, and I didn't write them down.
Yeah.
But went through different steps of like, at first it's this, and then it's this, and they'll teach these three things together.
You give them a piece of the puzzle,
Yeah.
of piecing together the truth, because a lot of the times they're not going to buy it all at the same time.
Yeah.
That's kind of ridiculous. I think it's different. This one's different because, say, Unplanned. Now, I do think positive things do come from those movies. I just don't think it's the most effective way, if that makes sense. I think that if you want to change the culture through Christian media, then you need, you know what I mean? Like Seinfeld and Friends have had more of an impact on culture than almost any other TV shows or anything in history. In modern history is what I'm saying. Like for our modern culture and Gen Z and millennials, and they changed the culture because Friends are all living together in the same space. You don't know who's dating who. They made it acceptable to live like that, and people thought that was normal. They normalized a lot of that. Unplanned doesn't normalize anything, and usually only Christians are going to go see a movie like that. Now they might convince someone, might be curious, someone might not say what's that movie and not even know, not having a developed opinion on abortion. So I think those movies do accomplish good, but I think American Gospel is different.
Did you watch Unplanned?
I know I haven't actually. I don't watch movies.
Yeah, but well, that's fine. It's interesting. Just her story. I've listened to her.
I've heard the story. I know the story.
Right. So that story is interesting. Now, because because she was entrenched, going that we are doing extreme, important work. She really believed that, and then her eyes were opened. Now, the problem is it's the content, right? Because there is a lot of movies out there recently about homosexuality that was, this person came out of the closet and then they succeeded, or this person was persecuted for being homosexual, but that led to laws being passed after they died, or whatever it was, right? So there's a lot of those types of stories coming out, and those are not inspiring to me either. I'm like, oh, that was well acted, but I disagree with the whole concept, the whole point of it. So just because something's well acted and well produced doesn't mean that it's any good either.
Well, I would go like this. Another used to what was a really popular show that influenced people. Other than Happy Days, a lot more shows looked like Leave It to Beaver and Little House on the Prairie, and that was closer to what you thought American culture looked like. So if you want to affect culture, I don't think it's the movies. But the reason I think.
When was the last time you watched Happy Days, by the way? Because I went to watch that with my children, and I was like, oh, yeah, I can't watch this with the kids.
It's been a while.
Okay.
That's why I said Leave It to Beaver and Little House.
Andy Griffith Show, Little House on the Prairie. Okay.
Okay, so Andy Griffith Show's on Netflix now, but so this is different because this is targeting people who think they're Christians that possibly and probably aren't. And those types of people are the exact types of people who are going to go watch a Christian documentary of some sort. And they may have absolutely no idea that they're in something called the Word of Faith and Prosperity Gospel. They just picked a church and showed up. And I think it does evangelize. My only real concern is that I don't know if you'll notice how hard it was to find on Netflix. it's not going to be promoted on Netflix unless it gets a surge of views from already people who just want to support it, and the culture is supporting it. Like, go watch this movie. I don't see it doing. It's not ever going to be. I don't think it'll be unless it gets like in the top 10 on documentaries or something like that. I don't see this going that far. But
that's what I was having a problem with it. You know, it was on Netflix, and I went to search it. It won't even show up of like a little thumbnail picture of it, like it often does. So I was like, this can't be it. And I kept on like, that's why I was like, oh, okay, there must be something else. It must be something else. So that was, they're definitely not going to promote it. I mean, why is there not a picture
it
of
was
that?
A weird picture of like, it didn't make sense. It didn't look like a movie. And yeah, so it was weird. But I think DJ's right that at least now, you had to pay for it before. Now most people have Netflix accounts or access to one, and it's available to more people, and at least just by referring people to it, they have access that they didn't have.
And I know where to find it if I want to use it. I was just going to say something that I'm really, I guess, trying to be sensitive to folks who might be members of a Word of Faith type church. And I have a bigger problem with the leaders of these churches than I do with the people of the churches. And so, I hope in no way, are we coming across attacking these people. It's the leaders that can really cause hurt to people that really irks me, that really gets to me. Not so much the members of these churches who just may have been raised in like we said earlier. And I think that's what one of the things that I want to kind of use as a kind of a closing statement for me is that we still want to make sure we're talking to people with grace and love and truth, but grace and love.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we just need to end on encouraging anyone listening to this that hadn't seen it to go watch it, decide for yourself. This is just our opinions, and we're not any major authority on this issue, you could say, but we do want to guide people to the truth, and you need to decide what the truth is, and hopefully the Spirit will come into anyone that doesn't know the truth's part, through this too. So that is it for our episode today. We have.
I do want to give a shout out to those who commented on our YouTube channel. Kev Martin subscribed. Dwayne Dean, a comment. Thank you for your encouragement, and Bananarama. Thank you for your comment.
Cool. We've got some followers now. We're going to take over the world, one subscriber at a time, making us all smarter. An evolution, not a revolution. All right, guys, so that is it for our episode today. Thank you. Go ahead and subscribe and comment if you haven't already, and tell us what you think. Argue with us, and we might bring it up in the next episode. So thanks for listening, and tune in next time.